In this video we are going to take a closer look at the recent updates to the Content Validity Updates and the Munitorum Field Manual MK1 documents published on Warhammer Community, as well as a new range of Primaris models revealed during the Las Vegas Open Warhammer Preview Online. In the first part, we will go through all the relevant rules and points changes, as well as the new models for Space Marines and the Deathwatch. In the second part, we will then look at the potential impact of these changes on the Deathwatch and how to move forward in chapter-approved Arks of Omen. Lastly, there will be a quick wrap-up of what has been covered.
Welcome to SwissHammer, your channel for modeling in Warhammer 40k. My name is Tammer, and I will be guiding you through this video.
Diving right into the Content Validity Updates document, this one has been an object of much speculation these past few weeks, as a variety of rules, including our Army of Renown, the Kill Team Strike Force, has been listed as expiring by January 2023. With our Army of Renown being both highly competitive and thematic, we were of course all wondering about its future. We now have our answer, and unfortunately, it is not the one we would have liked. The document got updated on January 25th, and it confirms that the Kill Team Strike Force is no longer valid for match play. Rest in peace, Army of Renown, you will be missed. When it comes to the Warzone books, it seems that GW is simply moving by date, marking an entry as invalid after a certain amount of time has passed. Be it physical availability of these books playing a factor in that decision or not, I find it a bit unfortunate that they would not simply provide a virtual document with Army of Renown rules and similar in order to keep them alive well past any actual book sales. After all, they provided datasheets for the Space Marine Captain and the Ancient, both of which are still valid. Anyway, really sad to see the Kill Team Strike Force go. I think it was one of the most fun ways to play Deathwatch since they got their own codex. Would love to see parts of these rules pop back up in the future codex. Let's say changing army-wide chapter tactics as part of the Super Doctrine or something like that. Moving on to the second change, the update to the Munitorum Field Manual MK1. This one has GW pulled the emergency brake on Plasma Inceptors, adding back the 10 points per plasma gun, meaning that the dual-wielding Inceptors are back to 60 points in total for the plasma loadout, gaining no points decrease in the light of losing Armor of Contempt whatsoever. While I would not argue that 40 points was undercosted and completely invalidated the bolter loadout, I think this has been a poor handling of the situation. In a news post, GW claims that they simply forgot to add the war gear cost. In truth, I think they did not have this on the radar and panicked as a consequence. As far as I am concerned, a far more elegant solution would have been to price the base model at 30 points, bringing them in line with other Primaris points drops, then adding back the plasma price tag, resulting in a Plasma Inceptor costing 50 points in total. As it is now, Plasma Inceptors are effectively worse than before with the loss of Armor of Contempt, and they were not really taken in competitive lists to begin with. Then last but not least, during the Las Vegas Open Warhammer Preview Online, GW revealed the so-called Strike Force Augustus, a box set consisting out of a multi-kit Primaris Lieutenant, 5 heavy intercessors, 10 of the new Desolation Marines, as well as the new Brutalis Dreadnought. These latter two have been floating around as leaks for quite a while, but it is great to see them now being officially revealed and the box set announced to be released soon. In a nutshell, the Brutalis Dreadnought is a close combat heavy variant of the Redemptor, and the Desolation Marines are basically the Primaris equivalent of Devastator Marines, packing some sort of improved rocket launchers. Of further note here is that they are clad in Tacticus armor like the Intercessors and not Gravis, but more on this later on. I will of course cover their full datasheets and rules once they are officially out. With all the relevant changes covered, what does this mean for the Deathwatch? As I keep saying over the course of this edition, the way they designed the kill teams makes us highly dependent on the strength of their individual datasheets from the main Space Marine Codex. With the price increase to Plasma Inceptors, the Indomitor Kill Team goes from biggest winner to a potential bench seat. In a previous video, I covered a way to roughly calculate the theoretical points drop required to break even without Armor of Contempt, which would be roughly 25% on average for an Inceptor, and even when adding in the discounts from the heavy intercessors, an Indomitor Kill Team with 5 Plasma Inceptors will now roughly end up at a 8% saving, which is well below the required value. Now, having said that, while I would personally discourage from spamming Plasma Inceptors and or taking them as their own squad, there might still be a use case for a mixed unit kind of Indomitor, as we saw way back from before the Kill Team Strike Force and Armor of Contempt. This would basically include 2 aggressors, 3 Plasma Inceptors and the heavy intercessors. This kill team will still generate roughly 13% in point savings, again below the required average, but more in line with other Primaris kill team loadouts, like the Hellblaster Fortis or a Spectre's kill team without camo cloaks. On the bright side of things, this makes Hellblasters themselves look far more appealing again. But back to the Plasma Inceptors, as it currently stands, Deathwatch might end up being the only chapter to actually still play them, even though in very limited amounts. As an alternative, we could of course go back to the old Indomitor Kill Team with 4 Boltstorm aggressors and a single Bolter Inceptor, which was originally on the rise thanks to the Army of Renown and Specialism Extremis. But now that AOC is gone and aggressors have been heavily discounted, this might still see play beyond the strat. As I was just releasing my own list changes in the last video, this has of course been unfortunate timing, but it also helped me to come to terms with kill teams versus character support. For those interested, I ended up dropping the Watchmaster and the 5 Plasma Inceptor Indomitor, in turn adding in a Redemptor Dreadnought, as well as an Eradicator squad with 4 guys including a multi-melta. While I really liked running double Indomitor, and still think that mainly kill teams are the way to go, a Redemptor or 2 or 3 still deliver in any list, they are easy to play and they cannot really be ignored by your opponent. Furthermore, if the Brutalis Dreadnought, to which I will return in just a moment, turns out to be anywhere near a Redemptor points-wise, I want to slot that one in, so I am in a way preparing for that hopefully soon to be made change. Then regarding the Eradicators, I think strategic reserves paired with Eradicator squads work really well if one does not want to invest into a full Indomitor, which in the end also boils down to overall points. Having said that, I still think there is play for an Indomitor with Eradicators, given that one goes for a 2-3 and 3-2 split between heavy intercessors and Eradicators, with the former acting as ablative wounds for the latter. I would not necessarily rule this out for a future list iteration, and neither would I rule out the Bolter Aggressors and single Bolter Inceptor combo. Speaking of the future, how do these new Primaris models fit in? Well, even though it is unfortunate that the Army of Renown is gone, at least we won't be having any datasheet restrictions. The big question is of course whether GW will unlock the option to include the Desolation Marines into the Forest Kill Team. As I mentioned earlier, they were Tacticus armor, so that's where they would go. In the past, Deathwatch has been lacking in terms of long-range heavy fire support outside of vehicles, but with a single churn of Devastator Doctrine, it remains to be seen whether these will be a viable alternative. Either way, I am sure competitive Deathwatch expert Jack Harpster, who recently joined forces with Goonhammer to suggest an Arks of Omen Deathwatch list featuring a grand total of 21 missile launchers, is literally going to have a blast with this. Cannot wait to read about the future iteration of the mentioned list. End of sarcasm. Furthermore, Deathwatch has of course a history with Dreadnoughts, and I could very well see us making good use of Brutalis Dreadnoughts with claws and multi-melta loadouts. Paired with Redemptor Dreads, we might just see the return of some Deathwatch Dreadspawn lists. This does of course not only apply to extremes, on the contrary, as I previously mentioned, if the leaked rules and previews hold up, I will add one to my own list for starters. All in all, I think that as far as the Deathwatch goes, while the Plasma Inceptor nerf is unfortunate and in my opinion poorly executed, swinging the points from one extreme to the other, I think the real loss here is the Army of Renown having been invalidated. While I welcome the opportunity to add a wider range of datasheet once more, especially now that the new box set has been announced, I always thought that the Kill Team Strike Force had such a great mix between being challenging, thematic and yielding great results. Would love to see some of these rules make it back in a future supplement in one way or the other. While I will hold my breath on the Desolation Marines, I think it really depends on their overall stats and whether we can take them in the Forest Kill Team or not. The Brutalis Dreadnought looks very promising as far as I'm concerned. To wrap things up, over the course of the video, we have looked at the recent updates to the Content Validity Updates and the Munitorum Field Manual MK1 documents that have been made available on Warhammer Community for free, as well as a new range of Primaris models revealed during the Las Vegas Open Warhammer Preview online. The most unfortunate news for Deathwatch is the now confirmed expiry of the Army of Renown, rendering it invalid for matched play. Furthermore, Plasma Inceptors went back to 60 points per model in total, which strikes me as a purely executed hotfix for something that GW seems to have overlooked in the first place. Personally, I think they should have dropped the base cost of the Inceptor to keep the Bolter loadout a valid pick, while keeping the Plasma loadout costed as it is. At the old new points, Plasma Inceptors did not really see much competitive play, and it is doubtful that we will see them pop back up in force now. For the Deathwatch, however, a case could still be made for a mixed units Indomitor Kill Team, consisting out of 2 aggressors, 3 Plasma Inceptors and the heavy intercessors. While the math does not fully check out on the defensive side, they still provide excellent firepower, and the opponent will have to chew through a whole lot of decently priced heavy intercessors. That aside, there might still be play for an Indomitor Kill Team with mainly Boltstorm aggressors or eradicators, and a single Inceptor is always nice for access to the strat. Either of these have done decently well in competitive lists before. For the eradicators in particular, a good alternative nowadays without the Army of Renown and free strategic reserves is to just bring them as their own squad. As far as the new models go, the big question will be whether Desolation Marines can be included in a Forest Kill Team or not, and I think the close combat oriented Brutalis Dreadnought has some great potential in the Deathwatch, a faction known to do dreads well, and then of course mission tactics and assault doctrine still synergizing very well. All in all, perhaps not the greatest news for the Deathwatch, but we are still being left with plenty of good alternatives and some more to come in the near future. So that's it for the new release of the Content Validity Updates and the updated Munitorum Field Manual MK1, as well as the preview of the new range of Primaris models. How do these changes affect your own lists, and what kind of adjustments will you do in the near future? Do you guys think that Plasma Inceptors are still going to be playable in the Deathwatch? Or is it time to put them back on the shelf? Are you looking forward to Desolation Marines and the Brutalis Dreadnought? Let me know in the comments. Finally, I would also like to mention that there is a SwissHammer Facebook page where I will be posting links to my videos as well as articles I find of interest. I do read a lot about the hobby, but not all of it will always end up as its own video. I look forward to seeing you there as well. I do also have a Patreon page. If you like my content, any additional support is greatly appreciated as it helps me invest into future videos. As always, thank you very much for watching, guys. Your continued support is greatly appreciated. I hope you have been enjoying this video. Give me a thumbs up if you did, and don't forget to subscribe if you haven't done so already. Thanks again and see you next time.